I'm Bob Klotz. I'm one of the co-founders of 350 Maine, and I'm the tar sands coordinator, and I am thrilled that you are here. There is a lot that I could say, which would be beginning, middle, and end of gratitude, including for Josh, who just said my bad and turned the mic down, so thank you, Josh. But I cannot emphasize enough how many people have worked extremely long hours pulling this together, and how powerful that work has been. And I want to note a couple of people. We're moving to this press conference quickly, but I just do want to acknowledge Heidi and Reed Bruger, who are the other co-founders of 350 Maine. And thank you for all of your support. And I need to drag Sarah LaChance up here for a moment. That means up here, not over there.
Give him some more.
And I just want to say that, Sarah, this vision that you have seen started in this noggin here. It adjusted over time because guess what? We trust a group process. And the group process really kept up with things as they changed in a very appropriately fluid way. But Sarah really stepped up to be the tar sands convener, and I just really want to acknowledge that and thank you.
Did not have anything to do with this. It was all you.
So having said that, thank you, and thank you, and there's so much more. And again, I could go on. I just do need to say, Chloe Maxman, who's coming up, so that'll actually move us into the press conference, has been a gift on top of a gift. It literally is, hi Chloe, babble, babble, babble. Could you do this? And 10 minutes later, I'm still babbling, and she goes, oh yeah, it's all done. It's all done. It's been done since you started. And so it's a gift. It's a gift from 350.org. She's our fossil fuel fellow this year, and we're going to have her kick off this press conference.
Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, so my name is Chloe Maxman. I am 21 years old, and I'm working with 350 Maine this summer. And so I'm going to be a junior at Harvard, but I live on a farm in Noblesboro, Maine. And so I'm just going to tell you my story and how I got here today. I'm here because I love my home, and I first got involved with environmental activism when I was about 12 because there was a proposal to develop Maine's North Woods. And I didn't want that, and so I started organizing around that. And when I got to high school, I wanted my peers to be involved as well. But there was no environmental club, and so I got that going, and we called it the Climate Action Club. And it was literally just me and my best friend, and we started with really basic campaigns like recycling and energy audits and a lot of this traditional advocacy that seems like it was the center of our world a long time ago. But as our campaigns grew and we got more funding, we became one of the top youth environmental ventures in the country. And it was, the most inspiring experience of my life to watch this small group of small town students go from being just another eco club to being on a national stage. And then last summer, I was working with the Sierra Club in Maine, and I was working on this tar sands campaign. And I came down here to take pictures of the pipeline. And I was imagining this big thing rolling through Maine's woods. But when I got here, I realized that there are just these little tiny yellow poles in the ground. And unless you knew what you were looking for, you would never know that there was a pipeline under our feet. And then I learned that this pipeline is also 76% owned by Exxon. And so the fact that this pipeline is so surreptitious, and the fact that it's owned by the most profitable corporation in the history of humanity, that really scared me, and I knew that I had to take action. And so that realization came around at the same time that Bill's article came out in Rolling Stone about Do the Math, and where the idea for divestment was born. And I immediately saw divestment as my way to continue to challenge Exxon and fight for a tar sands-free Maine, even though I was at school in Boston. And so the Divest Harvard campaign was born. And once again, it was quite literally 10 people in a room in September trying to figure out how to start a divestment campaign at Harvard. And by December, we had thousands of students in support of our campaign. We had a referendum where 72% of the students supported divestment. And we were mentioned, thank you, and we were mentioned in an article that was on the front page of the New York Times. So just like the Climate Action Club, Divest Harvard went from a small group of people to a movement that was changing our campus. And that's what I call first here then everywhere. The idea that one person or one group of people can change the world, but most importantly, inspire others to do the same. And I know this sounds very cheesy, because every time I say it, I know it sounds cheesy, but it's so true. And I think that the prime example of the power of this mantra is Obama's climate speech. Because for me, the most powerful thing was not that he finally spoke seriously about climate change, but that our movements are commanding his attention, that the movement against tar sands and against Keystone XL and the divestment movement were mentioned in his speech, and it's because of our power. And so it's moments like these that matter, despite our anxieties that our politicians are not hearing our concerns about environmental issues, they are. And so today we are changing the climate, but this time for the better. Thank you very much.
So again, many people to thank, including Regis Tremblay, Heidi Viertaler, Brian Leonard, many others I've worked with through Occupy along the way, and apparently this, I just learned, is called a cat. Kitten? A dead kitten. Well, I don't know that was politically correct, but I also just want to acknowledge this incredible thing that we were all part of, and particularly acknowledge Lee Chisholm for his artistry and putting that together. It was incredible. So, the next person I'd like to introduce is Connie Cross, a resident of Casco. I think I just realized last night as we're connecting all these things, we're in Casco. This water eventually ends up in Casco Bay. And those bigger connections we're all really trying to attend to. So I really want to acknowledge Connie. She'll tell you some about herself, but as a leader in this area of the anti-tar sands resolutions, we wanted to hear from her today and are glad she's here.
Thank you, Bob. Was that water you handed me, Sebago Lake water?
It was. Actually.
Good, okay. Just wanted to make sure it wasn't Poland Spring. Bob asked me to tell you all a little bit about how I came to be a supporter of this movement. And I have to say it started a long time ago when I was a very young child and had the very good fortune to come to summer camp on Sebago Lake. And at my camp, Camp Wohelo down on Raymond Cape, I learned to love the land. I learned to love every pine tree, every pine needle path, every chipmunk who crossed it. And I learned to love this wonderful lake. There's nothing like swimming in Sebago, or sailing on it, or canoeing on it. It is a treasure. And I think my friends in Casco join me in that sentiment. We are a people who love the out of doors, we love where we live, we feel privileged to live on the north shore of Sebago. And when this whole tar sands thing came up, I was asked to do a coffee and I groaned. And I said, oh no, not another thing. Not another environmental thing on top of milfoil and all the other, things that have come up. But this seemed to be one of the most important things that I could do. So that's how it all started. And I learned that people in Casco were very keyed into this. And when we asked people to sign a petition that would lead to the resolution that was passed, the first one in the state of Maine, it was easy to get those signatures. People were happy to sign because in many cases that pipeline goes through their backyards. It doesn't go through mine, for which I am grateful, but it goes through many. And people could see what the potential impact would be should there be an oil spill. Now, I live in Raymond in the summer on the shores of Panther Pond, and on the west shore of Panther Pond, the pipeline runs the full length. So I feel threatened on two fronts. But I also feel threatened by climate change. I've lived in Maine long enough to see how things have developed over the past 30 years. And those of you who are as old as I am and who have lived here as long as I have can, I think, join me in this knowledge that our lakes are freezing later in the fall and they're thawing sooner in the spring. And sometimes this big lake does not freeze at all. And that never happened 30 years ago. Sebago always froze. And now we're seeing something different. And of course, this last week, when we all nearly melted, I think that wouldn't have happened 30 years ago either. Maybe 1 or 2 nights of hot weather, but nothing like what we've been seeing. So I think we all have reason to be very concerned about what's happening. So it was easy to get those signatures. It was easy to get a resolution passed in Casco. And with that, I thought, well, why not take it to my church in Portland? Now, I go to a liberal church, the Allen Avenue Unitarian Universalist Church, and people are pretty savvy about environmental issues. And I took Casco's resolution to our social action committee and said, what do you think? And they said, well, let's go with this. This is amazing. So then it went to the congregation. Now, our church has a mission in which we state that we walk with care on this earth. And so we all asked ourselves some questions. Do we walk with care on this earth when we take down trees in the boreal forest of Canada, those trees that give us oxygen and give us life? And the answer was no. Do we walk with care on this earth when we dig a hole in the earth so ugly, so, I can't even find the words for the pictures I've seen of what the tar sands oil places look like? I know you've seen the same pictures. Do we walk with care on this earth when we dig a hellish hole like that in an operation that actually puts more carbon dioxide into the air and uses more energy than it gives us? No! Do we walk with care on this earth when we threaten the lives, the communities, the health and safety of the First Nation people of Canada? No! Do we walk with care on this earth when we threaten every community from Vermont to New Hampshire to Maine, through which this pipeline passes? No! And do we walk with care on this earth when we threaten Sebago Lake, the gem of southern Maine, which provides us with recreation, which provides us with a good economy, and which provides 200,000 people with water so clear that the Portland Water District hardly has to treat it. This water is pure, it is beautiful, it is clean. Are we walking with care on this earth when we threaten this lake? No! So one more question, after I tell you that, of course, our church unanimously, all of the congregation, said, yes, we will support this resolution, and it was taken to the Portland City Council, where a member of our church read it. And that's just the beginning, I hope, of a happy story. But a question that I want to ask to end with, and I hope it has a different answer, is, do we want to leave our children and our grandchildren and the children that come after that with a beautiful lake, a clean environment, a place that we know as Maine now and not that it is threatened to be? Yes! Thank you.
As a South Portland resident, I've been thrilled to work with the concerned citizens of South Portland who have had dramatic accomplishments, as I think we've all heard. And I'm thrilled to have worked with one of the leaders of that group, who's going to speak with us next, Carol Masterson.
I remember clearly the day I learned of a proposal to transport tar sands through the Portland pipeline which comes within 500 feet of Sebago Lake, our drinking water source. In that moment, I recall feeling panic. Why had I chosen South Portland as my home? Why had I ignored the nagging feeling that maybe living near 23 enormous oil tanks was not the wisest choice? As it turns out, the fact that this pipeline is in my community has actually inspired me to turn worry into action. I joined with others to form a group called Concerned Citizens of South Portland. After several months of hours and hours of work, we were successful in obtaining 4 times the signatures needed for an ordinance initiative that, if passed, could stop tar sands from being transported through South Portland. But then there are the proposals to transport tar sands through the Great Lakes region and through Keystone XL, and to export huge amounts of coal from the Northwest, and to continue or start fracking practices in 18 states, all of which exacerbates an already alarming climate change problem. And the reason we need all these fossil fuels is to support a culture that is based on a to-go, disposable mentality. I recently watched a documentary and read a book by the same name, No Impact Man. For those of you who are not familiar, it is about how for 1 year Colin Bevan and his family turned off the electricity, produced no trash, got around by walking or biking, and purchased nothing new except for food, and that was locally grown or raised. What they discovered was that living simply wasn't just good for the environment, but it made them happier and healthier. Colin Bevan believes that our individual actions do make a difference. In his words, it is time for people to take up the reins of government and business and to force the change we want and need. We cannot wait for leaders. We are the leaders. And this is why some friends and I are organizing a Portland area No Impact Week from September 15th through 22nd. I invite all of you to join us for this challenge. Please visit the No Impact Project website at noimpactproject.org/Portland to register. Corporate greed can only be fed by willing consumers. So let's refuse to be turned into consumers. We're people who care deeply about attending to climate change. Let's show the nation and the world that Maine's response to tar sands is to go beyond saying no, not in our backyard. Let's show them that it is unacceptable to tear our beautiful planet apart in order to extract fossil fuels. And we're willing to live differently to make sure that this doesn't happen. Will they please join us? Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. The connections continue. We have a powerful philosopher, activist in our group who I have just been so enjoyed coming to know. Had heard of her previously with work with the Tar Sands Blockade Group, representing all of us in that incredible action down in Texas. So it has been a gift for Sylvia Stormwalker to come home, and we're looking forward to hearing from her today, and thank you for being here, Sylvia.
Thank you, Bob. So, I hope this doesn't happen, but if I cry up here for 3 minutes, I guess that's what happens. So I just want to take the time to start by honoring the truth that this beautiful land that we're standing on is stolen land, and that the original inhabitants, the Abenaki, this was their home. And that for those of us who are settlers to this land, whose ancestors are from somewhere else, calling you to learn about the people who lived here and to join with them in solidarity to fight to defend this place. Thank you. So my name is Sylvia Stormwalker. I'm from Maine. I'm from Auburn. I grew up on the shore of Lake Auburn, and so a year, a week, and a day ago from today, I arrived in rural East Texas in the woods after hitchhiking and walking from Maine to meet folks who were gathering to defend their homes from the southern section of the Keystone XL pipeline, which had recently been approved by President Obama in Cushing, Oklahoma. And I spent the next 10 months working with people from Texas and Oklahoma and all around the country and continent. And it was a really wonderful experience, and I'll be going back there shortly. And while there in the heart of oil country, I became increasingly aware that back home here in Maine, my hometown river, the Androscoggin, which is crossed 3 times by the Portland-Montreal pipeline, was under threat of tar sands flowing through that pipeline. And I came back this winter really worried about that. And one snowy day, I took a drive with my mother, and we traveled the route of that pipeline following the yellow pipeline markers. And that land is so beautiful, that the snowy covered woods and the rivers and the streams. And as I was traveling, this dawning recognition came to me that it's not merely luck that the land in Maine has not yet experienced the extensive environmental devastation and social injustice that other places have. Places like the Gulf Coast, which is known as Cancer Alley, or the Athabasca River Basin up in occupied Canada in Alberta, or in the east end of Texas. The truth is that there are systems of power and privilege that determine who is worthy of living and who is worthy of dying. Some of those systems are called racism and settler colonialism. And those systems are intimately woven into the tar sands project. And I know that if you had taken, this is Barb, I might cry. If you had taken the 30-mile long toxic tour of the Houston refinery complex, or breathed the air in Manchester, Houston, where there's a park where kids play right across from the refinery where the Keystone XL would end, or if you'd been to the spider web of pipelines and fracking sites and holding tanks in Cushing, Oklahoma, where this country holds its nation's strategic oil reserves, you would know, as I do, that we in Maine are so privileged. And as my younger sister and political mentor, Em, says, there are some privileges that no one should have, and there are some privileges that everyone should have. And clean water and the ability to live in a place that's not polluted is a privilege that everyone should have. And though it saddens and angers me that my home and the homes of so many are being poisoned or under threat of being poisoned through tar sands and extreme energy resource extraction, the truth is that this pipeline that we are standing so close to offers us a real, tangible way to connect to the truth of our interdependence with all these other communities involved in struggle. And the truth that if we succeed here in Maine, we support people all across this continent engaged in struggle. And the same goes for the people that are currently fighting in Sarnia and in Quebec. If they stop the pipeline here, they support us here. So as we are standing here together, celebrating this beautiful place, and all of these people gathered in resistance to defend our homes, I just want us to all keep in mind our allies who are engaged in struggle all around this continent, and to work to support them. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sylvia. Before I introduce our next speaker, I just wanted to take a moment to thank each and every one of you. We all define activism in a different way, and some of us are more comfortable sitting behind our computer and sending emails or picking up the phone and making phone calls. or showing up to events like this and working in the background. I think you saw earlier when I got introduced, I was kind of a background kind of girl. But no matter how you get involved, we all need to keep the fight. I'm in awe to be amongst this group we call 350 Maine. So thank you for taking me along the ride, and I can't wait for the rest of it. And I also want to remind you, for those of you who didn't see today, there was a whole other group of us out on 302, showing everyone that drove by to enjoy this lake and all the watershed around it, where they were headed, that the pipeline is right there, sitting in their water. So I want to thank all of you that were a part of that. And now it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure to introduce someone who I so very much admire, who's leading the charge in the world of divestment, as well as leading the charge here with 350 Maine, and that's Reed Brugger.
My apologies for the cut off in the video. We should be up and going well now.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. We're honoring summer heat, and fortunately we have a break from summer heat today and are really enjoying the cool breezes off the lake here. And I am Reed Brugger, and I am a 350 Maine activist. I was arrested with 5 others on June 27th for raising public awareness about the dangers of Bakken crude that is being shipped regularly across our state. The 30 of us who gathered on the Pan Am tracks in Fairfield had a simple message: stop sneaking dirty fracked oil through Maine. 9 days later, the world woke up to the horror of Lac Mégantic. The rail disaster in Lac Mégantic is emblematic of a system that has lost its moral compass. How else could we get to the point where using defective tanker cars to ship millions of barrels of highly flammable oil through population centers is considered safe? How else can a company get away with setting work rules that have a single person manning a 74-car train and park it unattended overnight on an incline so it can get a rolling start the next morning before it hits town? How many more lives must be lost before we stop this madness? When we protested on June 27th, we couldn't have begun to imagine the tragedy that would unfold a week later in Lac Mégantic. We should keep that in mind as we oppose the reversal of the flow of the Portland-Montreal pipeline. I suspect our worst fears don't encompass all that could happen if that pipeline failed and tar sands spilled in Maine. We already pay too high a price when we extract tar sands, coal, fracked oil, and gas. Our fossil fuel addiction is turning vast areas of our planet into environmental sacrifice zones. In each of these areas, the lives of the people and the health of the land are sacrificed for the profits of the oil companies. On the Fort Berthold Sioux Reservation in the middle of the Bakken oil fields, Candy Mossett speaks about more than a dozen truck-related deaths and a dramatic increase in fatal respiratory diseases since the oil boom began in 2008. St. Berthold is their last piece of homeland, a homeland that encompassed all of the northern plains, and it is being made unlivable. And that's being repeated in Alberta and around the world. There's a word for that. It's genocide. Continued reliance on fossil fuels will surely lead to more human misery and a climate so changed that a mass die-off of species would be inevitable. The stakes are that high. 350 Maine will not back down in our campaigns against extreme energy. On June 27th, we stood against fracking. Today, we stand against tar sands. Next Sunday, in Somerset, Mass., it will be coal. We call on all Mainers to join our campaigns to end extreme energy extraction and stop climate change. That oil change should never have been loaded with Balkan crude and taken that fateful trip across the continent to the little town of Lac-Mégantic. We will end rail shipments of dirty fracked oil across Maine, and we will stop the reversal of the Portland-Montreal pipeline. Thank you so much. I have buckets here. We are hoping you will contribute to support the recovery of Lac-Mégantic. We are going to donate to Croix Rouge Canadienne, the Canadian Red Cross. Please contribute what you can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reed. Again, for me, the word that keeps coming up today is connections. I do want to acknowledge some additional connections. We do have our coalition partners. I want to acknowledge who've co-sponsored this event today: Environment Maine, Food and Water Watch, Maine Green Initiatives, and Glenn Brand is here somewhere from Sierra Club, or was, he voted in. And so we just want to really acknowledge that. And we are part of a Maine coalition, which also includes NRCM, and then New England Coalition, which is our partners with 350 New England. And I really, again, want to make another shout out to David Stember, who has been a gift to us in support of 350. Thank you, David. And David's not going to contribute in the bucket, apparently.
I don't have my wallet.
And also our friends in Canada. That coalition includes Canadians as well. So much to say. A number of things come to mind for me with our next speaker. One was having heard about him for years and having the opportunity to interview him about a year and a half ago while I was working with Occupy Maine TV. And I felt a little bit like a Bill McKibben groupie at the time, and I still do. And I'm thrilled that he's been here. He's here. He's really shown up in support of us in enormous ways. I stood across from him trying to think of the smartest possible questions to ask, and he kept up with everything. And I was like, well, what can we do as individuals? What one thing can we do? And I wanted to hear something that Prius, light bulbs, just something. And his answer was organize, organize, organize. And as far as I'm concerned, 350 Maine has been listening, and here we are today. Bill McKibben.
Thank you so much, brother Bob and Dave Stember and everybody else do such amazing work. It's really fun for me to be here. I end up at a certain number of rallies and demonstrations. I think we boast at 350 that we've organized about 20,000 of them in every country except North Korea now. But there's never been one as pretty as this, I gotta say. Just in sheer aesthetic terms, it takes it's as if the powers that be up above are doing their best to remind us what we should be powering our lives with. We're experiencing a kind of ongoing solar spill here today, a kind of ongoing wind spill, and it's entirely delightful, It couldn't be nicer, and it's a shame that we're not putting more of it to use, and we sure could be. We know what to do. It's moving to look around the world at the few places that have started doing what they should be doing. In Germany this summer, there are days when more than half the power that the Germans use is coming from solar panels within their borders. Okay? And this is Germany. Munich is north of Montreal. We could do this across this continent with such power, such ease. All it would take is standing up to the richest industry on earth and keeping them from taking us down a completely impossible path. I want to pick up where Sylvia left off and just talk for a minute about connections, of all kinds. I was up in Alberta a couple weeks ago. Our dear dear friends in the First Nations communities up there who we've worked very hard with over the last few years and who have really become just brothers and sisters to us, asked me if I'd come up to be in this healing walk across the tar sands. And we camped out for a few days in the boreal forest, and it was beautiful. In fact, the first night we were there in this teepee, a baby was born, and everybody was thinking this was going to be a child of great power, and everybody was very happy. But then we walked out across one small part of this vast tar sands complex, and I'd seen the pictures before, but it's worse than that. I mean, it's almost unbelievable. The only thing that comes to mind is Mordor. It just looks like not only have they taken the forest and turned it into a vast desert wasteland, and not only are there these belching, horrible upgrader refineries all through it, but there are these enormous tailing ponds, as big as the lake that we can see out here. And all the time that you're there, 24 hours a day, there are cannons firing. Boom, 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 boom in the background. And the cannons are there to make sure that no birds ever land on the tailing pond, because if they do, they're dead ducks right away. It's hellish up there. It's like there is a literal war going on, cannons and everything, against the natural world. And it's astonishing once you've seen it to see what people's lives are being subjected to, and then to think about people at the other end of that pipeline down in Texas, and to think about the people who have done the amazing and brave job over the last year of trying to slow down that southern end of this pipeline, and about the people both in rural and in urban parts of the Southwest that are coming together to say, we don't want this anymore. It's really powerful to see. We're also connected up just as intimately with those people all over the world who are suffering the effects of what happens when that carbon gets poured into the atmosphere. So it goes way beyond this continent. 350 just convened in Istanbul a couple of weeks ago. 5,000 young people from around the world applied, and we were able to take 500 of them and spend 2 weeks, 500 young people from 135 countries, training them up to go be great climate organizers all over the world, because they're needed all over the world, because the whole world is just coming apart. I mean, I'm not going to, on this beautiful day, spend a lot of time driving the painful truths of climate science into your heads. I know you know them already, but when I first wrote about this 25 years ago, when I wrote the first book about it all, it was still pretty abstract. There is nothing abstract about it now. Now, someplace around the world, every single day, people are dying. Think about the floods we've seen even in the last few weeks, as rain falls in quantities that it's never fallen before. Here, Vermont, where I live, had the rainiest May and June in its history, but all over the world. In India, northern India, in Uttarakhand, I just talked with our 350 India crew the other day, the monsoon came early, and it came very, very violently, like they'd never seen before. 5,000 at least religious pilgrims were washed away in the floods. They'll probably never find their bodies. They're buried under landslides and things, but it's the greatest monsoon tragedy in India's history. Up in Calgary, sort of irony of ironies, 3 weeks ago they had the biggest floods they've ever had. And the hockey arena there was flooded to the 10th row, and it must be said the corporate headquarters of most of the tar sands companies were underwater too, which might have been okay, but a lot of other people paid the price up there for all of that. And as usual, it's poor people that, I think about Vermont when we had the floods from Hurricane Sandy. One of the things from Hurricane Irene, one of the things everybody figured out was that trailer parks are built on floodplains, and that's whose homes got washed away. Those are the people that you're in powerful solidarity with, and who are paying real attention and are incredibly grateful that all around the world this network of people is rising up, equals, partners, leaderless, but beautiful. And I got to tell you the good news, which is that that movement is getting stronger and stronger almost by the minute. If I'm a little groggy, it's because I came in yesterday, I got into Portland about 2:30 this morning from Moab, Utah, where our friends at Rising Tide and 350 Utah and Peaceful Uprising and things were getting ready for the big fight against the first tar sands mine in the United States up on the Colorado Plateau, and they are organized like crazy. They're having an action camp next week as part of this summer heat stuff. It was beautiful to see. And the night before that, I was on the Columbia River in Vancouver, Washington, where people are fighting, all along the Pacific Northwest. They're trying to build ports to take coal and liquefied natural gas and oil out of the center of the North American continent and ship it overseas. And they're determined to make it the dirty energy corridor to keep corporate profits rolling strong. Many, many, many people are determined to make it the choke point that keeps that coal and oil and gas underground where it needs to stay. If they can't get it out to market, no bank's going to give them the money to build the damn stuff. And so that's why people are doing such brave work there, going to jail and everything else to make sure that that stuff never gets built. The day before that, I was in a place kind of like this, on the Mackinac Strait between Lake Huron and Lake Michigan, the longest suspension bridge in the world, I think. But underneath that suspension bridge, something that people had forgotten about for a long time, a 60-year-old pipeline running underneath the center of the Great Lakes, and a pipeline that, yes, they're determined to start pumping tar sands oil through now. It's as crazy there as it is here. Think about how insane it is to take a risk with something like this lake and this water supply. Think how crazy it is to figure out to take a risk with managing to simultaneously wreck Lake Huron and Lake Michigan at the same time. All of this is crazy. And the good news is that I think we're going to stop a hell of a lot of it. I don't know whether we can stop climate change. We've waited a long time to get started. But I am absolutely certain that we can stop an awful lot of this insanity. There is a movement rising, a fossil fuel resistance, and it is a beautiful thing in large part because it has no leaders. It has no Martin Luther King or whatever, and it doesn't need one because we're in a different time now. I think the image to have in all of our heads is what we want our energy grid to look like. Instead of a few centralized big power plants, we want 1 million solar panels on 1 million rooftops all interconnected. And instead of a few huge environmental organizations and a few leaders and things like that, what we want is an interconnected resistance that really, really works. And it goes from people who are doing things that seem, confrontational and whatever, like sitting in the trees in Texas, that go from that all the way to people, the Citizens Climate Lobby, busy writing letters to the editor all over the country, because that's sort of where they're comfortable. And sometimes people can switch in those roles back and forth, and we can all take part in different parts of it, and we're all part of this large thing that's emerging. A large thing that's emerging that wasn't there a few years ago, and that should scare the hell out of the fossil fuel industry. They have had a free ride for a long time, and they have all the money that there is. For all intents and purposes, they have more money than God. But at a certain point, money doesn't work quite as well if we figure out other currencies to use. And the currencies that we've got to use are the currencies of movements, passion, spirit, and creativity, and sometimes we've got to spend our bodies. And we can see it starting to work, We look down at the Keystone Pipeline, and we look at people fighting hard in Texas and Oklahoma, and then we look at people fighting hard in Washington and in Nebraska, and all over the country. When we started in on this 2 years ago, everybody said, don't even bother. This is a done deal. No one's ever stopped anything like this. They took a poll of energy insiders, the National Journal did, and 97% said that TransCanada would have their permit to cross the border by the end of 2011. They've built too much of it down south, but they haven't ever gotten their permit to cross the border, and there isn't new tar sands oil coming in from Canada that way, and that's because 1,250 some people went to jail, and because 15,000 people circled the White House, and because 50,000 people descended on D.C. in a cold day this February. I know a bunch of you were there.
Yep.
And that's power rising up. And I gotta say, it just makes me happy as heck to think of all those big piles of pipe sitting rusting in staging yards across the upper Midwest because they don't have their permit yet, and they may not get it. I don't know. I do know absolutely for certain that no one's going to put tar sands oil through New England because of the work that you guys have done. I don't have any doubt in my mind at all. We keep organizing like this fight, we will definitely win. They're having a hard time putting it through Texas and Nebraska and whatever. If they're having a hard time doing that, they are not getting it through Vermont and Maine. I mean, no way. And that's great, because we have to, when we do that, okay, when we shut down that possibility, it's not just that we're saving Sebago Lake and saving a certain amount of carbon in the atmosphere. It's that we're making it much harder for them to do their work in general. Because when, they're trying to triple the size of production up in the tar sands in Canada, they have vast plans for expansion. But when the banks that are going to lend the money to do that look at it, one of the things they see is, you know what, it's taken you 2 or 3 years longer than you thought to even build this Keystone thing, and maybe it's not going to happen. And the carrying costs on that, they're adding up into the hundreds of millions of dollars now. And they look at things like this and say, how are you going to get this stuff out to market someplace? They're not going to let you take it across New England. People in British Columbia just blocked the Gateway pipeline to the Pacific. We got to hold the line for a few more years. And when those few years are up, the world will have realized that we're no longer going to do this stuff. It's not us that are in the last desperate, cliff-hanging battle. It's them that are in the last moments of their power, okay? Before they are overwhelmed by sun and wind and common sense. And it's going to be a fight to see how much, we're obviously going to we've already taken tremendous hit to the planet's climate. It was not a good sign last summer when the Arctic melted. We've taken one of the 5 or 6 biggest physical features on Earth and we've broken it, And we look out, to the Atlantic here and realize that, like all oceans on Earth, it's already 30% more acidic than it was 40 years ago. We've taken hits, but we are now fighting back. I don't know exactly how it's going to come out, but I know that the fight is on. And as a New Englander, I'm off to D.C. in a day or two to meet hundreds of grandparents who are marching from Camp David to the White House in this incredible heat, and then on to Ohio where they're working on stopping fracking, and then on to Richmond, California where they're trying to stand up to the Chevron refinery built in the middle of this city, and things. But my heart's always in New England. This is where I grew up and where I love, and it is such a pleasure to know that New England is in good hands and well defended by all of you. You couldn't be doing a more important thing for the planet or all sorts of other people on it. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much, Bill. I know that was a hard trip, so we're glad you're here, and you're heading south here in just a bit. My understanding is if the press needs another opportunity to speak and you're available, Chloe will help that to happen. I just want to do a couple quick housekeeping things as we move forward. Just to remind you, people do ask what can we do, and there are opportunities to do things over at our information table in terms of postcards to sign, Portland Water District, Portland Pipeline Company, and to that governor of ours, Mr. LePage. So please, and the party continues as long as you would like it to continue. Thank you for your generosity on so many levels, including being here. We know everybody's life is busy. This is a Saturday. You could be doing something else. We're really glad you came out. What happens next is a closing ceremony that Andy Burt is going to head up. And then there will be two main announcements. One is Chloe with her divestment group, which is an opportunity for people to meet with Chloe Maxman and talk about divestment. And then the other is the Climate Summer Riders, who are a gift again to us here this summer coming through Maine. We really appreciate your attention to something that they'd like to share with you. And as they move through the state, we'd love you to support them over the coming weeks. Anything else, Sarah? Okay. All right. So where is Andy? Okay, it's your mic.
Well, I was thinking about this gathering. Oh, hey, sweetie. Yeah. And the words about all of us connecting to these wonderful white pines, to our fellow humans here gathered, and so on. And there is a short piece that was put together for the United Nations Environmental Group. And I thought perhaps we could join together in this. There is a refrain which is, we join with the earth and with each other. And I will read the verses and then I will ask you to add that refrain. We join with the earth and with each other. We join with the earth and with each other to bring new life to the land, to restore the waters, to refresh the air. We join with the earth and with each other to renew the forests, to care for the plants, to protect the creatures. We join with the earth and with each other to celebrate the lakes and rivers, to rejoice in the sunlight and the coming rain, and to sing the song of the stars. We join with the earth and with each other to recreate the human community, to promote justice and peace, to remember all children of all species. We join with the earth and with each other. We join together as many and diverse expressions of one loving mystery for the healing of the earth and the renewal of all life. We join together with the earth and with each other. It's been a pleasure to frolic in the water with all of you and to stand together for this place and for the whole earth. Thank you.
So again, there's just so many people to thank. I do want to thank Revision Energy that supported us by having their solar-powered vehicle bring Bill up here to Maine, to Sebago Lake. We have buses, thanks to Heidi Brugger for the heavy lifting for buses going out of Portland down to Brayton Point, Massachusetts for the coal protest on the 28th. And then it just keeps chugging along. And looking forward to seeing you there. So again, thank you all so much for coming out today. And you can introduce yourself. You guys do great with that. So I will say, this is the Climate Summer Riders. They have a bike. They're currently in Auburn, and the next stop is Waterville. And I'll let you tell the rest of the story from there. So.
Thank you. My name is Garrett. I'm from Indiana, and I'm a rising junior at the University of Notre Dame. So we are Climate Summer. It's a part of the Better Future Project, which is a nonprofit out of Cambridge, Massachusetts. So this summer, we're riding by bicycle, only by bicycle, over 1,500 miles across the state of Maine to bring awareness, to raise climate change awareness, and to really educate, outreach, and really stimulate the people in the communities for this really important work. You know, we think this is the most important challenge of our lifetime, and so we're out there really engaging with communities, connecting one-on-one with community members, and trying to grow the movement.
Hi, my name's Mariah. I'm from California and I go to school in New York City, so this is my first time to Maine, as are many of our teammates. And we just sort of wanted to share what it's like to be here with you, which is, you know, in one word, simply wonderful. But also, you know, when you come out to events like these, you always think, like, what can I do? Like, maybe my presence there will make the oil spill that much larger, and maybe I'll make an impact that way. And I think that we often forget the advantages that coming to an event like this has on yourself, because I think that sometimes it's so easy to just understand intellectually that there are lots of other people out there who feel the same way and who, you know, are going to stand with you, and then it's a totally different experience to stand here and look around at every single person here, whether you got here by a canoe or kayak or by riding your bicycle or came from Massachusetts or just came to share good music. And that sort of atmosphere and community is the kind of people that I know that we are so proud to be a part of and to foster that and as a community. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. It's really empowering in both ways to be here and to also just receive this atmosphere.
Alright, so my name is Sean and I'm from Portland, Maine, and I feel like, yeah, Portland, Maine's pretty cool. I feel like there isn't too much I can say. I'm used to talking to people who don't really know a lot about these issues, and I'm fairly sure we're all on the same page here, so it's not like I can really tell you about what's going on. But what I can tell you is something that really plagues my mind is the fact that the tar sands pipeline does threaten the water security of Portland, Maine, which is something you would never think of in Maine because we have a ridiculous amount of water, but the water isn't worth anything if it's not drinkable. So this really plagued on me for a while. I just couldn't think of anything but the fact that it's a real possibility that we might not have clean water. But I also realized that it's not just about us here in this town. It's not just about us here in this state. It's not just about us in general. This isn't a one-person movement. This isn't a one-state movement. This is a global, international, intercultural, interlingual movement that we all have a very big stake in. So this is not the end. This is only the beginning. As some people alluded to, there's going to be a vote in South Portland. Do we have any South Portland residents here? Woo! Yeah! So, the concern is in South Portland will be working to block the tar sands pipeline. And that's one way that they've learned that they can help this movement. And there's many ways that you can, whether it's related to the tar sands pipeline, or fracking in Western Massachusetts, or the Brayton coal plant action that's happening this weekend. Empower yourself. Find a way that you can use your personal talent, skills, interests, hobbies in order to further move something that's bigger than you. It's what I've learned to do, and it's brought me more personal satisfaction than anything else. So thank you guys for coming here. You guys all rock.
So we'd just like to mention also that we are one of 4 teams across the entire New England area. There are 2 teams in Massachusetts working on fracking, and another team in the states of Vermont and New Hampshire also working on the tar sands issue. And we are online. Our website is climatesummer.net. We have a blog. You guys should all follow us. And also something that you can do today, you know, we're all here for this movement. On a table over there, we're doing video petitions. So you guys, if you already haven't, you should come over. It's really simple and quick. You can help join our movement as we travel across the state of Maine to kind of join in solidarity against the tar sand movement. So thank you guys for your attention, and thanks for being here today.